So far in writing, we've thought about the kinds of stories that we'd like, we made our ideas, and then we started our story. After we started our story, we used our writing checklist just to see how we were doing, to give us an idea to make sure that we're following guidelines for how it is to write a narrative here at school. And then we started thinking about our main character. So in my story, my main character was Anne. I made an original list, and that's what's in green. And then I started adding things to it. I wanted to unpack it. I used this chart to go through to remind myself that I have to make sure that my character makes sense. I have to write about a person who sounds like a real person, someone who would actually do the things that I'm having them do. So we stopped here and we added things to unpack our sort of broad categories. So what does it mean to be smart and funny and kind? And we started on that in purple. Then we used a list here on the next lesson to figure out other things that our character thought about, other things that our character liked, or things like that. So this is where we stopped, and I want to go back and show you what I've added to my story based on these things, because that's what you're going to be doing. You did some of that yesterday, and now you're also going to be working on that today. So I wanted to take a moment to share with you my story. So my original story from the very first day is in purple, and then the rest of it is in green. And you might notice that I've got this sort of line arrowish thing that's drawn over here, because after I went back to reread what I had written, I decided that I wanted to add something so that I was putting more details about the character in it that made sense. So you can always add things. Dang it, I lost again. Anne was running across the finish line at the park. She was in third place. Her coach and teammates cheered for her. Although she tried her best, Anne was disappointed. She really wanted to win. She glanced at her watch, which she always wore for a race, to check her time. As she approached the car, she knew that what her mom was going to say. Right on cue, her mom reached out to hug her, even though she was sweaty, gross, and said, "I'm so proud of you. You look great out there." Anne grunted. Her mom asked if she wanted to grab a pizza for dinner. "Is Dad working late?" Anne asked. Her dad was a teacher, and she knew it was time for parent conferences. "No, he picked up your grandma from the airport. She's back from visiting your Aunt Susan." "Pizza sounds good, but none of that disgusting deluxe stuff. Cheese for me." On the way home, Anne got a text from her best friend, Michelle. Michelle wanted to FaceTime with Anne after dinner. Unfortunately, Anne needed to study for the big math test tomorrow instead. Michelle: "You free after dinner?" Anne: sad face. "Math test." Michelle: "'Kay, see you tomorrow." Anne hopped out of the car. In the driveway, her dad was unloading the trunk, and her grandma was getting out of the car. Anne ran to her and almost knocked her grandma over with her bear hug. So what you can see I'm doing right now is that doesn't have anything to do with her race. Her first race is over, and she didn't win. But that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is to develop my character so that eventually you want her to win the race. So right now, I decided I wanted to give the reader an idea of what kind of a person Anne is. So I left some clues in my writing. Some of the clues I have is that we know that she's a runner because it starts and she's racing. We know that she was working really hard at her run, and she must be pretty athletic. She was sweaty and gross, right? Her mom was going to take her for pizza, but she says that she only wants cheese pizza because all that other stuff is gross. So we know that she's picky. We know that she lives with her mom and her dad. We don't know if she lives with her grandma, but we know that her dad and her grandma are close because Dad went to pick Grandma up from somewhere. We know who her best friend is. We also know that Anne cares about school because she's going to study instead of hanging out with her friend. Okay? Then she gets home and she sees her grandma, and right away we know that she must really love her grandma because she was excited enough to run towards her and almost knock her down when she saw her. So these are things that you've learned about her. I've used my lists to try to make sure that my character is authentic, that my character makes sense. So right now, I've mentioned the running watch, which I'll continue to mention. I don't just mention it once and then get done with it. I've mentioned that she's got a grandma and that she's got both parents. I've mentioned that she's picky and I've mentioned that she's got a best friend, Michelle. I can keep mentioning those things, but you notice I didn't write a story that said, there was a girl named Anne. She really wanted to win a race. She's really picky. She only likes cheese pizza. She lives with her parents. She doesn't have any siblings. That's a super boring story. At least I think it is. So you want to make sure that when you're writing, it sounds real. It sounds like a real story. So that's what I have, and I can't wait to see what you have as well.